Welcome to Christina Speaks, and I am here with Jackie from Balloon Bar DSM, and she is a creative spirit who has taken that spirit and turned it into a business. Thank you, Jackie, for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So I've been following your work since you started a couple years ago with balloon design. I guess I'm not sure if that's what it's called, but it's definitely not like balloon animals or anything. It is art. I mean, it's beautiful works of art made with balloons. Can you tell me how you were inspired to work with balloons?
Yeah. Gosh, I think I should start by saying this. I know we talked about this at some point, but if you would have asked me, let's go 2011 when I first moved here, if I was creative, I would have solidly said, absolutely not. I am not creative. I had always considered myself more of like a logical problem solver, more marketing, business, kind of a brain, and that creativity just wasn't in the equation. And here we are, what is it, 2019, and I have a business. An actual business based out of creativity and art. And the way it started was in probably, 2017. I started kind of fooling around with some balloons. I was working a full-time job. I was working a part-time job, trying to buy a house. So I was really kind of just working. That's what I used to be, a huge workaholic. And I had recently got delivered some news about my sister being sick, and I was like, oh God, this is really stressful. Right. So I was on Instagram, just kind of like just zoning out, and I saw some pretty images of some balloons on there, and inside of my brain, with being like that business and that marketing, I'm always like, oh hey, there's like a need. I can always kind of visualize gaps in need inside of service and community, and I was like, oh, that's a really cool thing. I wonder what that would look like if I made some of those here. So I went to Party City, I think, and bought some balloons, and I sent a picture to my boss at the time, and I was like, I'm going to make some of these balloon things that I saw on Instagram. Mm-hmm. So I got on YouTube or something, and I watched how to do it, because whenever I do something, I want to make sure that I'm doing it really well. So I went on there and I learned how they were doing it, and I reached out to Denise at Ritual Cafe, and I was like, hey, I want to do something. I want to, because I really like to, display things. I guess it's kind of a way to say it. I like to share what I'm doing. And I reached out and I was like, hey, can I put this out in front of your business? It'll, support you guys. It'll bring business in. And she was like, yeah, hey, do it. And sure. I went out and I made something, and that started. When I got into balloons, I was like, it looked really good, and people were like, hey, that's really great. The art community started reaching out to me little by little, and I was like, hey, maybe this can be something. So
you were working full-time, part-time, and kicking off your business?
Yes, and here's the thing, it's like I didn't really consider it a business at the time. I considered it a side hustle or a side hobby that I could probably eventually monetize. Because anytime I think of an idea, I'm like, can you make money off of this? I think you can.
It's a good way to think about it.
So it's good, but it can also be problematic.
Yeah, I can see both sides for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and I think I remember that piece that you did for that cafe. It was outside. It was kind of long, and I remember something really colorful. I didn't know it was you, but it's not too far from here. I remember seeing it and thinking they must be having a party. Yeah. That's what I thought. And I didn't even, but it was different than anything I had seen.
Yeah.
it's hard to visualize what you do with balloons, because it's so much more than just a balloon animal or just decorations at a party. I mean, this is true art. So maybe if we'll show some of that up, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more later, some of those specific pieces. But it's so, I mean, it's integrated with the space, and it really makes it come alive. So how do you motivate what's going to be there? Is it driven by the client, or do you have a vision of what you're going to do?
Yeah, so I would say initially, like first contact, whenever I start to work with clients, they usually have a pretty good idea of what they want already, or I would say a basic idea, because with us being so socially connected, we do have that access. We have access to international artists, nationwide, all over the world. We are literally able to put our ear to the pulse of the artistic community if we are looking in the right places. And with Pinterest and Instagram, with even just a little bit of work, you can go in and really kind of see what's up and coming. I mean, you can see what the trend is. You can see what event professionals are doing.
Right.
And through that, it just creates just so much movement inside of these social spaces. And, I started to, come across a couple of those images, and so did other people. And whenever people contact me, they're like, hey, I have X, Y, and Z inspiration for this. And me as a marketing and a business person, I'm like, hey, I can really start to visualize how that would work with your brand or with your party. I don't know, I wouldn't say it is naturally, but at the same time it is, because naturally I'm a problem solver, and walking into a space, I'm like, hey, how can I meet your need right now? And how can I create an aesthetic for you right now? And that, I guess that part is just kind of like an innate natural part of me as a problem solver, is to be able to do that. But yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both, but generally people have somewhat of an idea, and then they say, what do you think? And then some of them are just like, hey, this is what my initial thought was. And then I go in and I'm like, hey, is this actually going to be feasible? And then we start to talk about some different ideas from there. Yeah.
So you have to take into account the space and colors, and then what is available, I'm guessing, for balloons. Is like every color under the rainbow available, or how does that work?
A lot of them are, yeah. A lot of them are, but whenever I work with corporate clients, a lot of them, it makes sense to match their brand. And I'm like, how can we create something like stunning that's going to speak to your brand and be representative of that for you? And I'm able to do that with the access as a business to being able to have all those different colors. So, and color theory, I never studied it, per se, but I would say that I kind of have a knack for it, which is, for me, it's kind of funny. It's like I have a knack for color, but I do. And and then there's a lot of training. So I really, really, truly rely on, especially, for the first year, I would say I really relied on getting in touch with some of these like professional networking groups inside of the balloon community, because there is so much. There is so much access to this professional communities, and they're so giving and so interested in like growing and sharing, because it's like the more we can create awareness and movement inside of creating space for balloons, it's like it's good for everybody.
Well, it kind of leads to my next question, because in a lot of different arenas, like people will show you a picture and they're like, I just want you to recreate this, and it's another artist's work, whether it's with your hair or a tattoo or whatever. So do you come across that? And if so, and it's another artist's work, how do you make it your own if a client says, I want you to copy this?
Yeah, I mean, we just have a conversation, and it's like, I could never duplicate one thing. I mean, unless it was like those 90s prom arches or balloon columns, those are pretty easy to recreate. But whenever it comes to like the style that I work in more than anything is called organic. And there is no duplication of that. I could not create the same piece twice if I tried. I mean, I can create the same color scheme and the same like similar concept, but there's never, it's just not possible. Yeah. And I'm like, I can do what I can to create this feel. Because I think what people really want is they want to, whenever they see an image, it speaks to them in some kind of way. And they're like, I want to feel what I'm feeling whenever I'm looking at this image. And I'm like, I can try to help you feel that thing. that you're looking for, which is, as customer service, it's like I'm trying to meet their needs as a business person, and as, sales, and like all these different hats that I wear. It's like I'm trying to meet a need. I'm trying to give. It's not about, it's like I'm trying to give them what they're asking for. So, and generally, I feel like I've done a pretty good job with it. So,
well, yeah, the pictures on Facebook, if you're interested on Facebook, you can look them up. They're Balloon Bar DSM. They also have an Instagram page just to get a feel for some of the work. Her photos are beautiful. The colors come out really, really sharp and crisp. And the designs are unique. Some of them are long. Some of them really take up the bulk of space. Some of them are, on the wall or on the ceiling, and they're out of the way, but they lend a pop of color. It's a great variety.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with all of the different ways that, and you can tell that it's an organic design, but executed so differently each time. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So I noticed that some, are bigger, like a whole banquet hall, and then some of them are like a small first birthday. Do you have like an event that sticks out in your mind that was either your favorite because it was fun or because you really got to challenge yourself? Is there any, or it could be a couple of them that really stick out in your mind for your balloon art?
It's a good question. All of them have been so different. Wow. I would say one of the hardest ones that I've ever done, which was also one of the most stunning that I've ever done, at least in my opinion, for myself, was the one that I did for the Alzheimer's Association. They did a launch event called the Purple Soiree, and it was shades of purple with gold in there, and I created this massive installation for just one of the rooms. I ended up doing 4 installation pieces for their event, but I also had done all the decor for the actual event, like the tables and the linens and stuff like that. But the actual balloon piece in one of the rooms, it was 20, 40, 60 total. It was 65 feet of balloons, and it covered, it went from one point to another point over an entire wall, and it was probably like 5 or 6 rows deep. And I looked back and I was like, I created that? Like, how did I do that? And then, as you kind of went through the other event, it was like there were a couple other little pieces, and there were 2 beautiful, beautiful wall pieces that we had incorporated all these florals into. And that would probably have been one of my favorites. And I would say if I had a second close, it would be the one that I did at Horizon Line Coffee for a dinner. It's called Around the Table Pop-Up. It was one of the very first ones that I was doing last summer. And it was last July, actually. And it was this, Horizon Line is such a clean, like modern, simple space. And I created this installation that kind of hooped through the ceiling, and we put all this foraged greenery inside of it, and the outcome of it was it was stunning. Yeah.
And these pieces are big. Do you have to assemble them on site then?
Yeah, so most of them I do, because I could assemble them in the studio or in my house, and I do to an extent, but I can only fit about 15 feet in my car because I've tried. I bet. I have tried to fit as much as I can in my car. But generally for me, it just makes more sense to go on site and build there, because I'm able to really kind of see as I get to work and as I start to really work through this, it's like I start to like see truly the space that I'm working with and kind of build into that space as I go. And it's easy. I just bags of balloons and a balloon pump and on my way.
And is it a hand pump or electric?
It's an electric pump.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was going to say, you must have really good arms. No. Just pumping away. Like, wow, you must be built under your clothes.
No.
Okay. So then is that like it's a professional grade, I'm guessing, like something you had to order specifically to fill tons and tons of balloons?
Yeah.
Not like something you get at like a Party City or an Nobby's or something?
Well, you can get something. No, you can't get it there. You have to get it online. So,
yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a double pump.
And then do you keep all of these different colors online or on hand, or do you order per event? Or?
Generally, I order per event. I have quite a bit of stock, but especially as it's really interesting because I knew whenever I went into this, I was like, I would love to work with more brands and businesses and be able to kind of meet that need. And as I've done this, I have, been able to really kind of accumulate. But at the same time, as I do work with a lot of corporate clients, and they have like very specific colors that they need. So fortunately, I work with some like really close distributors, and I get next day.
Oh, nice.
I get all my stuff next day. So. They're amazing. Without my distributors, I wouldn't be as good as I am. So,
and then how long did like that piece that you said 65 feet? How long did something like that take? How many hours?
That one specifically took about 8 hours, and that was with help, with hired help. So yeah.
So you have people that you train that you call when you need them, or okay, cool. That sounds like fun. Maybe I'd want to be trained one day.
Let's do it. We can play balloons.
I mean, every time I see your work, well, first I think, ooh, that's Jackie's work, because I don't know any other artists that work in balloons in Des Moines. Are you the only one, pretty much? Oh, really?
No, there's more.
Oh, well, then I guess I've been giving you credit for every balloon.
No, I will say that, I mean, a lot of the work that has been out there, it probably is mine, but I do have competition that is also very competent and good at what they do as well. So
yeah, I didn't even know that. I just thought it was all yours. So, but it seems like it would be fun. I mean, I guess that when people see that, it's not something that you see every day. So I'm guessing that when your clients see it, that they're just like in awe and amazed and loving it, and that's got to feel good as an artist to get that. Do you always get to see their reactions, or?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, it's a little more difficult with weddings because, we've got like the bride hiding in the groom.
Yeah, I can see that.
But generally, I get a lot of feedback on site, and people are like, this is incredible. And for me, as a person, it's like I've had such an incredible opportunity to work with organizations that I truly care about. And I know whenever I very first started this, I was like, how am I going to be able to continue doing or connecting with people and agencies that really align with my value system? And it's like magically, like through this amazing like alignment of stars, it's like a lot of these organizations are meeting me where I'm at, and I'm meeting them where they're at, and we're able to work together. And it's like they're like, this is great. I've had even Planned Parenthood, it's like it wouldn't have been the same without it. And I'm like, I know, like it truly wouldn't. And it's like it's hard to take ownership for something like that, because it's like, yes, this is for you guys.
Well, I remember when you did a piece for the Warren Morrow Latin Music Festival, and I think we messaged a little bit, and then you're like, yeah, I have some ideas, and you know how it is when you're planning a festival, you have 5 million details in your head. And I just remember thinking to myself, everything I've seen of Jackie's is beautiful. Yeah. Whatever she comes up with will be great, will add value. I didn't worry about it. I didn't really even think about it. You showed up, you got it done. It was beautiful. We got comments on it. People, took photos in front of it. Just as I thought, like it was just like, yep, this, and this. These are okay. Go with it, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So I personally appreciated that I had all the confidence in the world that you were going to come up with what worked best for the space, and that I didn't have to be the creative one for that one. That was that was all you. And I've seen some of your work, with other festivals, and or what I thought was your work, I guess. But I've also seen like some smaller things like private parties and things like that. How much of your business is individuals, and what types of events do they mostly want your artistry for?
Yeah, I would say probably right now it's a good mix. I mean, I can think of even, today, right now, I would probably say it's about 50-50. 50% is like businesses or corporate clients, and the other 50%, and it's a lot of bridal showers and a lot of first birthdays or second birthday parties is the majority of them. And just like I have stayed mostly away from the wedding industry. Not really sure why. I mean, it just hasn't really been my thing.
But work with those bridezillas.
Yeah, I mean, it just it's just a little different for me. It's like I just love working with brands and businesses, and but I have had a couple brides here and there that have just been like, it's been a pleasure. I just loved working with it. But I would say it's probably about 50-50. And yeah, so, and it's pretty surprising because I was not sure if I told you guys this, but I would guess that probably about 80% of people, it could actually be more, of people that contact me have first contact with me through Instagram or Facebook. And I'm always really surprised at the amount of corporate clients that are coming through that arena to kind of make contact with me as well. So, yeah.
Cool. And you don't only do balloons, like you can do a full event. So tell me a little bit more about how you got into just events in general.
Yeah. So, kind of loaded question, but we're gonna go here.
Okay.
So when I was young, and this is something I should say, I haven't shared too much about it, but when I was young, really young, I got in trouble. And I was a really lost person, just 18 years old, completely lost, 19 years old, getting in trouble. And I just knew whenever I got in trouble, I was like, oh, I need to get to work. I need to make some changes. So my sister at the time was working for a restaurant that was also a venue and a catering company where we're from in East Tennessee. And she was like, just come to work where I'm working. She'll hire you. It was a family-owned business, but it was just this beautiful, huge restaurant. And it had like 1, 2, 3. It probably had 8 or 9, maybe even 10 different event spaces, like different rooms where we would host political parties. We would host corporate events, everything from like Purple Hat Ladies to Mary Kay to, somebody running for Congress, to, somebody's, bridal shower or their reception dinner. And that's really, I did that with them. I started out serving tables and hosting, and I worked with them on and off for about 10 years. And I really learned through that experience because I ended up going, starting at serving tables and then ended up in more leadership capacities. And, with me, I'm such a detail-oriented person that, that just kind of became something that felt really good to me and just felt natural to me, was to work these big events and make sure that everything kind of came into place the way that it needed to come. And I did that for 10 years.
At the same location?
Yeah, at the same location, until they closed down. And then I ended up going to college. And while in college, I started working with migrant families and, the Latino population, like the local Latino population. And I thought, man, I would love to bring some sort of event or celebration to celebrate, what I hold so dear. Because, I had worked with a Latino family for so many years, and I was like, man, if people only knew what I'm seeing, I think that they would have just a really different perspective. And so I went to the directors of a huge festival that they have in the city called the Blue Plum Festival. Think of it like Hillbilly 80-35. Okay. It's true. They bring in some incredible bluegrass artists from all across the nation and Americana music. But it's pretty much what it is. But it's the Blue Plum Festival. It was huge. And I went to the director at the time and I was like, hey, I have an idea. I want to create a Latino festival. And he was like, okay, and I was like, no, but I'm serious. I really want to do this. And he was like, okay, I support you. You have to do all the work though. So I did all the work and, worked. And which is the funny part is I actually got this. I was a student at the university at the time in the Spanish program, and I was like, God, this is way too much work. What am I doing? So I started reaching out to different organizations on campus, different programs like advertising and marketing and the Spanish department. And I was like, can I get some help here? Like, I need help. This is too hard. I'm like a college student. I'm working full time. And I was like, can we do service learning for this? And so, at that capacity, it's like they started building in the festival into service learning projects. And, they started really kind of pitching in, like a lot of students started getting involved in it. And so it turns out I did a festival. So, and then I ended up working for the Blue Plum Festival doing some stage management, recruitment, and sponsorship development for them as well. And then I came here and kind of let that go for a little bit. But it's always, where I had worked in it for so many years, it has been always something that just kind of keeps coming back. So it's kind of where you have found your place, kind of. It's just my thing, among others. But it's one of the things that I feel good in that arena and in that space.
It still amazes me that you say that you wouldn't have thought of yourself as a creative, because even before your balloon art, you contributed some designs, some design T-shirts to the festival, the Warren Morrow Latin Music Festival a few years ago, that you designed yourself. They were, some of them were in Spanish, some of them were bilingual, but they were very clever. They were unique. Yeah. They had some pop culture images that were very familiar to the Latino community. And then didn't you also make flowers, like these big
paper flowers?
So it's hard for me to I'm going, really? You didn't think you were creative, but you had your hand on, you've been doing this creative work for a while.
Yeah, I know. And I did crocheting and knitting, and I know it's so random. Yeah, because I did those shirts, and I remember whenever I started doing those shirts, it was kind of the same spirit that I kind of approached the festival that I founded was called the Courtesan Latino Festival. And it's actually still going to date in Johnson City, Tennessee. But I kind of approached those shirts. I was like, okay, so my kids are bicultural. They're going to be bilingual. Here I am. My spouse is, from El Salvador. And I'm just seeing I see with different eyes and a different heart. What I see, and I'm very aware of what other people are, there's just such a different climate with different populations, and I just thought, how can I contribute to making people feel empowered? Mm-hmm. And through that, it's I really wanted to, empower others, especially the Latino population, and, those kids that are American born, but also, maybe have Latino family members, or maybe they're, mixed race or mixed culture. And, I was like, I want to, cultivate that empowerment for them, and whatever my piece is, and this is going to be part of it. And it was, again, that marketing, it was just it kind of always goes back to me being able to see gaps in a market. And I was like, this is something that we could do. This is something that I could do that people would feel really proud about. It's kind of similar to doing events. It's I would like to provide something that people can feel really good about. Yeah. And then the paper flowers, I don't even know what I was doing with that.
But they were beautiful. They would be a whole background. Yeah. I think the first time I saw them was, and I didn't know they were yours until I saw it later on in your Facebook page. I think it was a fashion show, a quinceañera fashion show or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was the backdrop for photos, and they were these beautiful big flowers, not like the paper flowers that you think of that, kids make in school. These look sturdy, well made. The way that they were arranged was almost like a design piece in itself.
Yeah, and I think that also, because I did do those paper flowers, and that was also, I was able to see at that point in time. I remember sitting in my floor whenever my daughter Sophia, she was just, she was getting ready to turn 1, and I was like, oh, I want to do something really special for her. And I saw these pretty paper flowers on the internet, and I was like, oh, that's pretty trendy, and I haven't seen any of those here. And I was like, I'm gonna learn how to make those. And I have the kind of personality where I feel like I can do anything. It's I feel like I could fix a car. I feel like if I try hard enough, I can learn coding. It's I just feel like I can do anything, and I have such a spirit of can do and want to do. And I just want to try so many different things.
That's so cool.
And that was one of the things. And I did some, and then I was like, oh, hey, I could probably make some money off of this too. so there we go back to that. And, Yeah.
And do you combine them now? Do you make flowers to go with your balloons, or do you keep them separate?
Not as much. And I'll tell you, paper flowers are a lot more work.
Oh, really?
Yes. So time consuming. Yes. So time consuming. Way more. And people, and it's whenever I price my work, it's I price knowing what kind of work I've put into it. And people are like, whoa, that's a little too much. And I'm like, I know it is, because I've done a lot of work.
Yeah, that's the thing about artists. You're constantly being asked to give away your talent.
Yes.
That's something I'm very, very conscious about, with musicians that play the festival. We can't always afford them, and I know that going in, and there's always that price that I hope that they'll be okay with, and then whatever price they actually come in with, and sometimes we can negotiate, come in kind of around there. But in so many arenas, I guess it's not even really limited to that, because I have a marketing background too, and I've had people who just assume that I will come in and tell them how to run a Latino marketing campaign just for free. And I'm like, well, that expertise that I have didn't come for free. That was a degree, that was time, that was, and
yes.
And so let's say that you're working with a client that's also maybe a friend or an acquaintance. And how do you work with pricing when does that ever get awkward?
Not really anymore. Whenever I very first started this and it was more of just a hobby, I gave a lot away, and part of me was like, it's like I didn't really understand also what it was worth. But a part of it was also just like, it's just a hobby. But whenever I decided to commit to it full time, I started again really relying on those professional marketing groups, and they gave me a lot of resources and tools to work with. And one of them is like a price sheet that I use, whenever I go in and I start to do a job. And now I've done enough training, because whenever I do take on something, it's like I want to do it the best way possible. So I usually do some training and learning and education behind it. And similarly to balloons, and I have put in enough work to know how many balloons I'm going to need for like so many feet of work that I'm going to be doing, and I can plug that in to a formula and say, hey, and then it's like I set my hourly rate, and I'm like, hey, so based on all of this, this is what my price is. And I just kind of leave it there. It's like, this is where I'm at now. And it's like I haven't made it a secret, like this is my full-time job. And fortunately for me, I can say that this community has been really supportive of that. So, I've had to turn down, and I'm like, hey, I can't do this for free. I do a certain number of free jobs or donation jobs a year, and I really kind of figure out, who do I want to work with, who, how is that going to happen organically, and how many do I want to do a year. And after I hit that number, it's like I've had a lot of conversations with other women in business, and I'm like, God, I just feel really, I remember saying I feel really unappreciated. And it's like people just keep asking for stuff for free, and they were like, hey, here's some advice. This is kind of how we have learned to approach this. And I have, similarly taken a similar approach. I'm like, this is how many I would do a year, and I've already kind of met that need for the year. So, this is my price.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you have to make a living, and there's only so far that exposure goes. And I think the more work that you've put in there, you get to a point where you're like, I don't really need the exposure. I need those invoices to be paid.
Yeah, we need money now. And especially, it's like I did leave my full-time job to do this full-time. And, it's like, this is my job. I mean, and it's like, I have had conversations with people, and I'm like, do you have a job? And, whenever you go to work, do you want your manager to say, hey, come to work and I'm not going to pay you? And they're like, oh, no, I would never do that. And I'm like, same. Right. It's like, this is my job, so I can't do it for free.
Right.
So,
And then you mentioned that you have a space that you work out of. Tell me a little bit more about that, and how did you go about finding the space and selecting that space?
Yeah, so through the artistic community, through the art community. So one of my good friends, she started inviting me to some of the Art Week events, and just kind of networking and kind of meeting people, and people were like, hey, you're the balloon gal, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, it's me. And I remember I was like, I was having just such a hard time working from home, because I had just really small kids, and I was
they just want to play with the balloons.
And it was just like, there's just, at the time I was living in an apartment before we bought my house, and I was like, this isn't working. And I connected with Mainframe Studios, and I put in an application, and then I followed up, and I was like, do you have any space? And they were like, we do. And I was like, what do you think? And they were like, yeah, we're going to go ahead and get you that space. And it's a great space to work out of, and I mean, I think whenever I initially went into that space, I thought it would be different, because I had different goals, and those goals have changed, as I've started to, as I've gotten more and more into the work. But it's a really good place for me to go bring my balloons and get some of those big jobs started, or to really try out some new ideas that I have, because whenever I conceptualize ideas, it's like, I can only say, it's like, I have this idea in my head, and it's like, now I have to try to translate that out. Mm-hmm. And it's a good space for me to be able to do that in like quantity and space. So.
And when you have people working with you, do you have to communicate that vision, or do you just give them like set tasks so that you can stay with the vision?
Yeah, I have the vision and I will kind of guide them and delegate through a lot of it. I mean, I think the reality of it is people see the end product and they're like, wow, that is, it's incredible. It's very artistic. But all the work to get up to that is very, very unartistic. It's just a lot of very monotonous work. It's like we are inflating and tying and inflating and tying and inflating and tying. And we do that for hundreds and thousands of balloons, which, it's like I have calluses on my fingers and, I've, had cuts from, using the line that I use to, tie them all together. And it's just a lot of really monotonous work. And that's usually where I'm like, that's where I need the most help is, with that inflation piece. And then from there, it's like, then I am able to conceptualize everything. So, yeah.
And then what happens to the pieces when the event is over?
Pop, pop, pop.
And do you have to go in and pop all those balloons?
Sometimes it's me, and sometimes I'm just like, you guys can pop it. I have seen people cut pieces out and bring them home. Sometimes we reuse them. Like, I've had a couple events where like, hey, I kind of pitched even to the community foundation event. I was like, this is a lot of balloons. They were like, yeah, it's a lot of balloons. Should we try to give some away? And we collectively reached out to a couple of different organizations, and they were able to come in on site and bring some of those for events that they had coming up, because I use a good quality of balloon, and so they're going to last a pretty long time if they're not outdoors, so they're able to reuse them. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, how long would a piece last if it was indoors and you didn't touch it or mess with it?
Yeah, a month or more.
Oh, wow. Without deflating or losing its shape?
Yeah, I mean, they get kind of droopy eventually, but I mean, if it's in a place that's not in direct sunlight or too much heat, they're going to stay in really good condition for several weeks.
And is it a special kind of air that you're pumping into it? Is it just...
No, it's just the balloon itself. Okay. And it's so funny. It's like one of my friends was like, when did we become so bougie about balloons, Jackie? And I was like, I don't know, but it's happened. But
so you got a regular birthday party, like, oh God, those balloons.
I know. I have had to use, I remember one time I needed orange balloons. It's like, of all the things, I just needed orange balloons and I didn't order them. And I went around to Walmart and Party City. And I ended up having to go to Walmart because it was so late and I had to do this event the next day. And I was like, I didn't order balloons. Party City's closed. And I blew up those balloons and I was like, no. I was just like, I couldn't believe it. Because it's just such a dramatic difference in quality.
You're like glowing and crying. Like,
I know. I'm like, they're going to pop. These are just, no, these are trash. And so...
And what do your kids, what do they say, or what do they think of Mom as the balloon lady?
They get it now. So they've had a lot of fun with the balloons, but they also understand it's like, this is my work. I tell them, I'm like, this is my work. And they're always like, this is so pretty, Mom. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty.
But don't touch.
Yeah, like, exactly. But I mean, we've had times where I'm like, just jump in them. It's like, here's a bunch of balloons. And I think for me, it's like, I have worried as a parent, it's like, am I like desensitizing them to the fun of a balloon? Because like, they are literally joy. Balloons are joyful, it's like, you can't go to a party without balloons and you're like, hey, this is actually meant to create joy.
Right.
And they have had them so much in their lives the past, almost 2 years. I'm like, are they still going to enjoy this? But they do. They still ask me for them. It's like, even whenever they have friends come over, they're like, will you blow up some balloons, Mom? And I'm like, yes.
I'll hold on to that, because it'll come the day where they won't care about you or balloons. I know. They'll just be with their friends like, Mom, can you and your balloons disappear?
Can you make this go away now? Thanks.
Yeah. And that's when you fill their room with balloons. They open that door. She's a million balloons. Like, now clean it up.
Yeah. There you go. Good.
And recently I've seen some posts that some beautiful cakes that you're doing. So tell me a little bit about that, Miss I'm not creative, but I do all these creative things.
Yeah. So, again, tres leches is like my favorite cake in the whole wide world. And I learned how to make tres leches cakes probably 12 years ago. it was from a Mexican family that I had worked with at the time, and they showed me how to make a tres leches cake, and I was like, oh, my life is made now. And my sister's really creative. She's made some really cool cakes, and I just got an idea in my head. I was like, I just want to make some cakes, and again, pulling inspiration off of Instagram and Facebook and all these images that we see like floating across our feed, you know, and through our life, you know, and I was like, I just want to try to create it. And for me, I am an acts of service. If we go to like love languages, I would say like I am an acts of service kind of woman. And that's one of the ways that I show people that I care about them is doing service. And so I wanted to make a cake for somebody as a gift, and I was like, I want to make the best cake they've ever seen or the best cake they've ever tasted. And that's kind of what I do. It's like whenever I do something, it's like I just really want to make sure that I'm doing it really well. And so, yeah, and again, I'm like, I could probably make money off of this. But I think that, you know, I think realistically, whenever I think there's a part of me that like really, truly craves these different artistic outlets. And and it's constantly evolving and changing, and you know, cakes is one of them right now. You know, it's like I have thought, you know, maybe I should incorporate this into part of my business too, because I love cooking. I love feeding people. It's you know, it's just one of the, you know, it's like one of the great joys of my life is sitting people down and feeding them and being part of that. You know, so, and this just happens to be a little piece of that. So,
and do you have like a flavor that's your signature flavor for tres leches cake? Or
nope, just plain old vanilla tres leches.
The original, the classic.
Yeah. So, and I always use, but I make my own whipped cream icing. So again, working in that restaurant that I worked at, I learned how to make the best whipped cream. They called it chantilly, and that's probably my bombshell ingredient. So
good to know.
Yeah. If you ever need a cake,
I'll keep that in mind for sure.
Yeah.
I'm a cake girl.
No, I will say this. I take that back. Yes. Raspberry.
Oh.
I make a really, really good raspberry compote that I put in the middle.
Oh, okay.
That's insane. It's so good. Yes.
That's good to know.
That's what it is.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. Just I love talking to creative folks because the brain waves are different and how you view things, and it's awesome to see you having kind of your business sense with your creativity and asking yourself, how can I monetize this? I mean, that's how businesses are made every day. So, you know, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, just do it for fun. But, you know, if you can take it to the next level, then
and that's the thing. It's like, I think everybody can, you know, and I think the challenge for me is it's like I do get, you know, it's like as I seek creativity and, you know, just ways to express, one of my biggest challenges is not going down too many pathways, because I could totally do that. You know, it's like I talked to somebody yesterday. I was like, I feel like I could start 1,000 businesses, you know. But I mean, I truly think that anybody can really do that. It's just, you know, it's like the work isn't necessarily hard. It's just like the commitment that you're willing to put into it, you know. Because creativity can be a learned skill. I truly believe that you can relearn what you kind of let go of as a child.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Well, this has been cool to learn about your business. I'd like to get to know a little bit about you. And so what I ask a lot of my guests are to tell me their 5 favorite things about Des Moines. And it can be anything. They tend to skew towards food, but they don't have to be food related. So what are 5 things that about your favorite things about living here in Des Moines?
I don't go out to eat very much, so it won't be the food. I would say one of them has been, for me specifically, has been women. I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to say all the people, but my experience with the women in Des Moines has been so supportive and so accepting and validating. Here, I have met and seen such an incredible group of women here, yourself included. You know, it's like you see, I mean, I've just seen a whole different side to women since I've been here, and it's inspiring. So that would be 1. 2 would be the art community. It is not a huge community, but it is got some of the most creative, hardworking people that I've ever also experienced. It's like coming from East Tennessee, and I pretty much stayed in that region for most of my life. I didn't have too much experience outside of that, and the art community here has been so accepting. And I had a really hard time owning that I was an artist. I was like, no, I'm not an artist. And I remember I did Wine Fest, and somebody was like, so you're an artist? And I was like, yes. Yes, I am. And they have been really a big part of that. Is there's just like really down to earth people that are working really hard inside of their craft, and they're just like, hey, come on, let's do this together. And so the art community would be another one. I would also say a lot of the organizations here, I've seen organizations that are doing some really difficult work, and around reentry, which is a huge passion of mine, mental health, and I think that Des Moines is willing to have hard conversations about stuff like that, and it's not happening enough, I will say that, but I do see a lot of organizations really risking it to have those conversations. I would say the immigrants here is another one. My husband's family they're immigrants in this country, and I have got to see I've had so much experience. I wouldn't say experience. I've had so much exposure, I feel like, over the past 8 years since I've been here, and I have just seen the beauty of immigrants in this community and what they're doing here. And it just sometimes it's like gobsmacking. It's like, it's like we have people that are, starting businesses and really they're doing really hard work. And the immigrants. Yeah, there's so much that we're able, we have so much access if we make ourselves open to that. And so that, and and I would say this is a really great community for my kids. We feel safe here. My kids have options to learn about arts. They have options to just go to a festival, or just to go walk around in a safe space. And it's just such a great place for my kids and for myself.
Yeah, that safety is something that that drew me here, and I think in a lot of ways keeps me here. So I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
and where I'm from, it's not that it's unsafe. There is, I will say that there's a huge opiate addiction in Northeast Tennessee. It's one of the highest in the nation. And I remember I've been home a couple times, and I thought, should I move back home? And whenever I look at the odds and weigh it out, it's like this Des Moines is a really good community. Of course, every community has work that we need to do. It's going to be forever and always.
Sure.
But yeah, it's safe. It's safe.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jackie. It's been fun getting to know more about you and more about Balloon Bar. Do you have some installations or any pieces out that the public can see in the next few weeks anywhere?
Not right now. I've got some work coming. I've got a quinceañera that I'm doing this weekend, and I've got some other jobs coming up this month, and I'm just not really sure what they are called quite yet. I know I'm doing one for business. I actually met with the owner today for a business in Valley Junction, so I'll have one out there.
Cool. Yeah. And then on social media, where can people find your work?
Yep. I'm very active on Instagram, which is where I'm most active, and it's at Balloon Bar DSM. And there I talk about a lot more than just balloons on there. So if you guys follow me there, just be aware. I talk about criminal justice. I talk about mental health. I talk about therapy, all the things. Less about balloons, a lot of images of balloons, but the stories are different. And then there's also Facebook, which is Balloon Bar DSM.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. And for those of you who tuned in, thank you for watching Christina Speaks. And I hope that you'll follow Jackie. Yeah. And if you're in Des Moines, go take a look at one of her pieces or hire her for your next event. Thank you.
Thank you.